More than 37 years have passed since Quantum Leap first aired, and the people who brought it to life lived stories every bit as strange as the time travel adventures they filmed each week. One of them collapsed alone in his Malibu home at 67, one of the most dangerous-looking faces Hollywood ever produced, privately devastated by a loss no father should have to survive. Another was a struggling New York comedian who spent his final 2 years working through a cancer diagnosis he never told the cameras about, and died just as his own show was finally coming together. A third guest starred as a frightened 10-year-old extra and grew up to direct Hollywood films and stand toe-to-toe with Batman. A fourth played America's most notorious assassin on a Tuesday afternoon, and within a decade became one of the most beloved characters on premium cable. A fifth was already a teenage television doctor when he wandered onto the set for one afternoon, only to reinvent himself twice more before the world was through with him. And the woman standing just off camera, the one whose voice you heard every single week without ever seeing her face, may have shaped the show more than anyone whose name appeared in the opening credits. Long before viewers ever learned his character's real first name, audiences knew him simply as Gooshie, the frantic, bug-eyed head programmer of Project Quantum Leap, forever hovering over his console in the control room, feeding Al the readings that kept Sam alive in another person's body. Dennis Wolfberg played the part with a nervous, comic energy that made every scene brighter. He was 42 years old, just 3 days shy of his 43rd birthday, when the series premiered in March of 1989. Dennis Wolfberg was born on March 29, 1946, on Long Island, New York, to Francis and Sidney Wolfberg. Long before comedy, he spent 12 years as a public school teacher in New York City, first at PS 71 in the Northeast Bronx, and later in the tougher classrooms of the South Bronx. He earned a master's degree in clinical psychology from Queens College along the way, an education that, by his own admission, gave him plenty of material once he finally left the classroom behind for good in 1979. Stand-up comedy became his real calling. Wolfberg built a reputation as one of the most reliable comics working the national club circuit, headlining rooms in Las Vegas and Atlantic City, and becoming a fixture on The Tonight Show and The Merv Griffin Show. Twice voted America's top male comic by club owners nationwide, he won the American Comedy Award for Best Male Stand-Up in 1991, and starred in his own half-hour HBO special the following year. He married fellow comedian Jeannie McBride in 1985, and the couple raised 3 sons together. His recurring role as Gooshie on Quantum Leap introduced his manic, instantly recognizable delivery to a whole new audience, and in April 1993, Entertainment Tonight devoted an entire segment to his relentless touring schedule. What almost none of that audience knew was that Wolfberg had been diagnosed with melanoma around 1992, and was quietly fighting it while the cameras kept rolling. He kept working through the diagnosis for roughly 2 years, continuing to headline clubs even as his health declined, reportedly performing his final stand-up set only weeks before the end. At the time of his death, he was still in the middle of negotiating a deal for his own television show. Colleagues who worked alongside him on Quantum Leap remembered a man who brought the same manic warmth to the set that he brought to the stage, someone incapable of walking past a crew member without trying out a new bit. He had been diagnosed at least 2 years before his death, and, according to those close to him, never let it slow his touring schedule. He continued booking clubs across the country, even as treatment wore him down. Dennis Wolfberg died of melanoma on October 3, 1994, in Culver City, California, at just 48 years old, a warm, restless talent whose momentum never had the chance to slow down on its own terms. He showed up first as Seymour, an eager young newsstand boy in a Season 1 episode, then returned 3 years later for one of the show's most audacious 2-part episodes, playing Lee Harvey Oswald himself as Sam leaped through the final years of the assassin's life. Willie Garson was 25 years old when he first appeared on Quantum Leap in 1989, a working actor with talent to spare and absolutely no idea that his most famous role was still nearly a decade away. Born William Garson Pasamont on February 20th, 1964, in Highland Park, New Jersey, to Muriel and Donald Pasamont, Garson grew up in a Jewish household and began studying acting as a teenager before formally changing his surname. He earned a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Theater from Wesleyan University in 1985 and went on to complete a Master of Fine Arts at the Yale School of Drama, a rigorous, classically trained foundation for an actor who would spend most of his career playing eccentric supporting characters in comedies. Through the late 1980s and early 1990s, he built a reliable resume of guest spots, appearing on Cheers, Twin Peaks, and, of course, twice on Quantum Leap. Everything changed in 1998 when Garson was cast as Stanford Blatch, Carrie Bradshaw's sharp-tongued, endlessly loyal gay best friend on HBO's Sex and the City. The role ran through the series' full run and its subsequent films, turning Garson, a heterosexual actor, as he often noted with amusement, into one of the most recognizable supporting players of his generation. He followed it with another beloved long-running part, the paranoid con artist Mozzie, across 81 episodes of White Collar from 2009 to 2014. In 2009, he adopted a son as a single father, and in 2021, he stepped back into Stanford Blatch's shoes one final time for HBO's And Just Like That. Between his two blockbuster roles, Garson quietly amassed one of the busiest resumes in television, turning up in more than 300 episodes across shows as varied as Friends, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, The X-Files, and Star Trek Voyager, always as the same kind of instantly likable, slightly neurotic supporting player. Garson was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer and continued working almost to the very end, completing his final film role in 2021's Before I Go. He died at his home in Los Angeles on September 21st, 2021, at the age of 57. A performer who spent 4 decades making other people's stories funnier, only to leave one of the most quietly devastating exits of his era. He appears for only a handful of minutes in a single 1989 episode, playing a dock worker named Blue, who bullies a developmentally disabled young man that Sam has leaped into. It is an unremarkable role by any measure, except for the fact that the actor playing it was, at that exact moment, roughly 3 years away from becoming one of the most instantly recognizable faces in American cinema. Michael Madsen was 32 years old when the episode aired in November of 1989. Michael Søren Madsen was born on September 25, 1957, in Chicago, to Calvin Christian Madsen, a World War II Navy veteran turned Chicago firefighter, and Elaine Madsen, a filmmaker and author. His younger sister, Virginia Madsen, would go on to her own acclaimed acting career, later earning an Academy Award nomination for Sideways. Michael began performing at Chicago's famed Steppenwolf Theater Company in 1980, apprenticing under a young John Malkovich, before landing small film roles through the 1980s, including a supporting part in 1983's War Games. Everything changed in 1992 when Quentin Tarantino cast him as Mr. Blonde in Reservoir Dogs, the sadistic straight razor-wielding criminal whose torture scene, set to Stuck in the Middle with You, became one of the most notorious moments in modern film history. It made Madsen a fixture of Tarantino's world for the next 3 decades. Bud, the down-and-out assassin brother in Kill Bill Volume 2, a supporting role in The Hateful Eight, and a part in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Along the way, he collected a genuinely staggering body of work, appearing in more than 300 film and television roles, from Thelma and Louise and Donnie Brasco to the James Bond film Die Another Day, in which he played NSA Chief Damian Falco. His personal life carried real weight beneath the tough guy image. Madsen married 3 times and had 6 children, and in 2022, one of his sons died by suicide, a loss that friends said he never fully recovered from, even as he continued working steadily on independent films and publishing volumes of his own poetry. In interviews toward the end of his life, Madsen reflected openly on the difficulty of balancing a positive personal life against a giant career, acknowledging that decades of intensity on screen had come at a cost off it. On July 3, 2025, Madsen was found unresponsive at his home in Malibu, California, and pronounced dead of cardiac arrest, with heart disease and alcoholism later cited as contributing factors. He was 67 years old, and at the time of his death, he was preparing to release a new poetry collection titled Tears for My Father, and had several independent films still in production. She appears only twice across the original series run, but both appearances carry enormous emotional weight. Beth Calavicci, the devoted young wife Al leaves behind when he ships out to Vietnam, waiting for a husband the Navy has long since given up as missing in action. Susan Dial was 27 years old when she first played the role in a 1990 episode built almost entirely around her aching, wordless dance with Dean Stockwell's hologram. Susan Vanita Dial was born on May 25, 1962, in Marquette, Michigan, to Peter Balwant Singh Dial of East Indian descent and Christine Dial. Raised largely in Palatine, Illinois and Worthington, Ohio, she earned a Bachelor of Fine Arts from Otterbein University before making her professional stage debut in Alaska, and, remarkably, her Broadway debut opposite the legendary Uta Hagen in George Bernard Shaw's You Never Can Tell. A series regular stint on ABC's short-lived Hot House in 1988 brought her to television full-time, and her turn as Beth on Quantum Leap became one of the defining roles of her early career. Dial went on to build a long, steady resume of guest work across the science fiction landscape, appearing as Carmen Davila on Star Trek The Next Generation and as Dr. Dinara Pell across 2 episodes of Star Trek Voyager, alongside dozens of other credits on shows like Seinfeld, NCIS, and CSI. Her personal life included 4 marriages, most publicly to former teen idol Sean Cassidy from 1995 to 2003, with whom she had a daughter, Juliet, and later to director Andy Cadiff. When NBC revived Quantum Leap for a new generation of viewers in 2022, Dial was invited back to reprise Beth Calavicci, now reimagined as Al's widow, a full-circle moment that closed out a story she began playing more than 3 decades earlier. Away from the screen, Dial has spoken warmly about Beth remaining one of her favorite roles of her career, precisely because so much of the character's heartbreak had to be conveyed without a single line of dialogue. Today, Susan Dial is 64 years old and continues to act, write, and direct. Bruce McGill holds a small piece of Quantum Leap trivia that belongs to no one else on this list. He is the only actor, besides the 2 leads, to appear in both the series premiere and the series finale, playing 2 entirely unrelated characters 4 years apart. In the pilot, he was Dr. Weird Ernie Ernst, an Air Force squadron commander. In the finale, he turned up as Al the bartender. He was 38 years old when the pilot aired in March of 1989. Bruce Travis McGill was born on July 11, 1950 in San Antonio, Texas, to Woodrow Wilson McGill, an insurance and real estate agent, and Adriel Rose McGill, an artist. He earned a Bachelor of Fine Arts and Drama from the University of Texas at Austin, then spent years honing his craft with Washington, D.C.'s National Shakespeare Company and Providence's Trinity Square Repertory Company, before settling into New York theater. His breakout film role came in 1978 as the wild-eyed D-Day in National Lampoon's Animal House, a part that included his now famous trick of drumming out the William Tell overture on his own throat, a bit he would later reprise to a lullaby on MacGyver, where he spent years playing the title character's best friend and fellow soldier of fortune, Jack Dalton. McGill went on to become one of Hollywood's most dependable character actors, forming a long collaborative relationship with director Michael Mann across The Insider, Ali, and Collateral, and building a habit of playing real historical figures, including Secretary of War Edwin Stanton in Steven Spielberg's Lincoln, and CIA Director George Tenet in Oliver Stone's W. On television, he spent 6 years as Detective Vince Corsack on Rizzoli and Isles between 2010 and 2016. He has been married to his wife, Gloria Lee, since 1994. Between his 2 Quantum Leap cameos, McGill quietly built a career defined less by stardom than by sheer reliability, amassing well over 150 credits and rarely going more than a year or 2 without a new role. Colleagues have described him as the kind of actor a production leans on precisely because he is never the story, until, decade after decade, his face turns out to be in nearly everything. Today, Bruce McGill is 76 years old and still working steadily, with recent credits including Reacher and Netflix's The Crew. Buried in the guest cast of a single 1991 episode is a shy 10-year-old boy playing a young witness to a murder, a role so minor that his character does not even have a surname in the credits. Joseph Gordon-Levitt was exactly 10 years old when Permanent Wave aired in October of 1991. A working child actor with no way of knowing that within 15 years he would be one of the defining actors of his generation. Joseph Leonard Gordon-Levitt was born on February 17, 1981, in Los Angeles, the grandson of Hollywood director Michael Gordon. He began appearing in commercials and television movies at age 6, and by 1991, the same year as his Quantum Leap appearance, he was also playing dual roles in the revival of Dark Shadows and appearing in Robert Redford's A River Runs Through It. His breakout came in 1996 when he was cast as the alien in human form Tommy Solomon on Third Rock from the Sun, a role he held for 6 seasons, while also building a film career with movies like 10 Things I Hate About You. The 2000s transformed Gordon-Levitt from a former child star into one of Hollywood's most respected leading men. He carried the acclaimed neo-noir Brick in 2005, earned a Golden Globe nomination for 50-50, and starred opposite Zooey Deschanel in 500 Days of Summer. He then became a fixture of the era's biggest blockbusters, playing Arthur in Christopher Nolan's Inception, and taking a major role in The Dark Knight Rises. Beyond acting, he founded the online creative collective Hit Record in 2004 and made his feature directorial debut with Don John in 2013. He married entrepreneur Tasha McCauley in 2014, and the couple have 3 children together. Even at the height of his blockbuster years, Gordon-Levitt kept one foot firmly outside the traditional studio system, using Hit Record as a platform for thousands of independent artists and treating directing as seriously as acting. Today, Joseph Gordon-Levitt is 45 years old and remains one of the industry's most versatile actor-director-producers, a long way indeed from the anonymous 10-year-old witness in a single 1991 hour of network television. Nearly 2 years after Joseph Gordon-Levitt's brief walk-on, another future household name turned up on Quantum Leap, though this one was already a star in his own right. Neil Patrick Harris played Mike Hammond, an irate fraternity president squaring off with Sam over a masked do-gooding classmate, in the Season 5 episode Return of the Evil Leaper, which aired in February of 1993. He was 19 years old at the time, already 4 years into the role that had made him famous. Neil Patrick Harris was born on June 15, 1973, in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and was discovered by an acting instructor at a young age. He landed his first major film role at 15, playing a mentally disabled boy opposite Whoopi Goldberg in 1988's Clara's Heart, a performance that earned him a Golden Globe nomination. Just a year later, he was cast as the title character in Doogie Howser, M.D., playing a teenage genius working as a licensed physician, a role that ran from 1989 to 1993, overlapping almost exactly with his single guest appearance on Quantum Leap, and one that made him one of the most recognizable young actors on American television. Life after Doogie proved difficult, as it does for many former child stars, and Harris spent much of the 1990s searching for a second act through guest spots in smaller films. That second act finally arrived in 2004 when he played a wildly exaggerated, drug-fueled version of himself in Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle, a performance that reintroduced him to audiences as a fearless comic talent. The following year, he was cast as the womanizing Barney Stinson in How I Met Your Mother, a role that ran for 9 seasons, earned him multiple Emmy nominations, and turned him into a pop culture institution all over again, this time as an adult. Harris came out publicly as gay in 2006, met his future husband, actor David Bertka, that same year, welcomed fraternal twins via surrogate in 2010, and married Bertka in 2014. He has since become one of television's most sought-after awards show hosts. Beyond acting, Harris has published a best-selling memoir and a series of children's books, and has been widely credited with revitalizing the modern awards show broadcast through his string of hosting gigs at the Tony Awards, the Emmys, and the Oscars. Today, Neil Patrick Harris is 53 years old and remains a constant presence across film, television, and Broadway. A career of reinvention that began in a small way with a single forgettable guest spot on a time travel drama in 1993. Long before she was Lois Lane, And long before she was one of the desperate housewives of Wisteria Lane, Terry Hatcher played a young college student named Donna Elise, the woman Sam Beckett would one day fall for and nearly marry. After Sam leaped into the body of one of her professors in the Season 1 episode, Star-Crossed. She was 24 years old when the episode aired in 1989, one guest role among many for a jobbing young actress still years away from stardom. Terry Lynn Hatcher was born on December 8, 1964, in Palo Alto, California, the only child of Owen Hatcher, a nuclear physicist and electrical engineer, and Esther Hatcher, a computer programmer. She grew up in nearby Sunnyvale, studied ballet as a girl, and, while attending De Anza College, joined the San Francisco 49ers Gold Rush cheerleading squad. Her earliest television work included a run on The Love Boat, and a recurring role as Penny Parker on MacGyver, alongside guest spots like her brief appearance on Quantum Leap. Everything changed in 1993, when Hatcher was cast as Lois Lane opposite Dean Cain's Clark Kent in Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman, a role that ran for 4 seasons and made her a household name. She parlayed that fame into a turn as Bond girl Paris Carver, opposite Pierce Brosnan in 1997's Tomorrow Never Dies, and then, in 2004, landed the role that would define her career a second time over. Susan Mayer on Desperate Housewives, a part that ran for 8 seasons and earned her a Golden Globe Award along with multiple Emmy nominations. Hatcher married twice and has one daughter, Emerson Rose. Between her 2 career-defining roles, Hatcher also built a substantial catalog of film work, including 1994's Soap Dish and 1996's 2 Days in the Valley, while never fully stepping away from television guest spots. Today, Terry Hatcher is 61 years old and continues to act and take on voice work, decades after her first forgettable turn as Sam Beckett's college sweetheart. You never see her face on screen, but you hear Deborah Pratt in nearly every single episode of Quantum Leap. Hers is the voice that opens each installment with the show's iconic narration, and hers is the voice of Ziggy, the self-aware supercomputer running Project Quantum Leap from inside Al's handheld data link. She was also, less visibly, but far more importantly, the show's co-executive producer and head writer, personally writing or co-writing roughly 40 of its 97 episodes. She was 37 years old when the series began. Deborah M. Pratt was born on December 16, 1951, in Chicago to an African-American family. Her father, Colonel Bertram Pratt, commanded a segregated U.S. Army tank destroyer battalion in Europe during World War II, before later serving in the Illinois National Guard, and her mother was a schoolteacher. Pratt studied psychology and theater at Webster University and was discovered through a nationwide NBC talent search that brought her to Los Angeles, where she built an acting career on shows including Happy Days and Magnum P.I. It was on Airwolf, created by her then-husband Donald P. Bellisario, that the two began the creative partnership that would later produce Quantum Leap, which the couple co-created together after marrying in 1984. As both the invisible voice of the show's guiding intelligence and the writer behind many of its most emotionally ambitious episodes, Pratt's fingerprints are arguably deeper in the DNA of Quantum Leap than anyone else's outside the 2 leads. She and Bellisario had 2 children, Troyan, born in 1985, and later famous in her own right as Spencer Hastings on Pretty Little Liars, and Nicholas, born in 1991, the same year the couple divorced. After the show ended, Pratt continued working steadily as a writer, director, and producer, running CBS's Tequila and Bonetti and The Net, directing an installment of PBS's Masterpiece Theater in 2000, and later directing episodes of Grey's Anatomy. Beginning in 2006, she published a trilogy of spiritual science fiction novels under the Vision Quest banner. When NBC revived Quantum Leap in 2022, Pratt returned to voice Ziggy once again and directed an episode of the new series herself. She has also occasionally stepped in front of the camera as an on-screen guest star, most memorably as a grieving widow in the Season 2 episode A Portrait for Troyan, named for her own daughter. Today, Deborah Pratt is 74 years old and remains active as a writer, producer, and advocate for greater representation of women in the entertainment industry, having received 5 Emmy nominations and the Lillian Gish Award from Women in Film across a career spent largely just off camera, and now one half of the partnership that made the whole show work. Dean Stockwell played Rear Admiral Albert Calavicci, the wisecracking, cigar-chomping hologram who guided Sam Beckett through every single leap, a role built entirely on chemistry, since Stockwell and Scott Bakula rarely occupied the same physical space in any scene, and still became one of television's most beloved double acts. He was 53 years old when the series began, and he arrived on set carrying more than 4 decades of Hollywood history already behind him. Robert Dean Stockwell was born on March 5, 1936, in North Hollywood, California, the son of actor Harry Stockwell, the singing voice of the prince in Disney's original Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and Elizabeth Betty Stockwell. Signed to MGM as a child, Dean was acting alongside Frank Sinatra and Gene Kelly in Anchors Aweigh by age 9, and followed it with a string of prestigious 1940s films, including Gentleman's Agreement and The Boy with Green Hair. As an adult, he earned a Best Actor award at Cannes for 1959's Compulsion, opposite Orson Welles, and shared another Cannes Best Actor prize for 1962's Long Day's Journey into Night, alongside Katharine Hepburn. Stockwell's career then went through long, unpredictable hiatuses. He drifted into Topanga Canyon's counterculture scene and dabbled in real estate before staging one of the great comebacks in modern film history, appearing in Wim Wenders' Paris, Texas, and 2 David Lynch films, Dune and Blue Velvet, across the mid-1980s. His performance in 1988's Married to the Mob earned him his only Academy Award nomination and directly led to his casting as Al, a role for which the cigar was entirely his own idea, which he later joked was simply a good way to get free cigars for 5 years. After Quantum Leap ended, he continued working steadily, including a run as Navy Secretary Edward Sheffield on JAG, and a memorable turn as the villainous brother Cavill on Battlestar Galactica between 2006 and 2009. Stockwell married twice and had 2 children. He retired from acting in 2015 after a 70-year career and more than 200 credits. Following a stroke, Dean Stockwell died of natural causes on November 7, 2021, at his daughter's home in Whangarei, New Zealand, at the age of 85. Between projects across his 7-decade career, Stockwell also periodically stepped away from Hollywood entirely, pursuing collage art and real estate during his quieter years, always returning to acting whenever a role interested him enough. Scott Bakula said of him afterward, "I loved him dearly and was honored to know him. He made me a better human being. We grew very close over 5 very intense years." And finally, the man at the very center of it all. Scott Bakula played Dr. Sam Beckett across all 97 episodes of Quantum Leap, a role that demanded he convincingly become dozens of entirely different people, men, women, children, the elderly, sometimes within the space of a single scene, while the audience continued to see only him. He was 34 years old when the series premiered, the very first actor cast in the show, and he read opposite the auditioning finalists for the role of Al before Dean Stockwell was ever officially confirmed. And, according to Bakula himself, he felt an immediate connection with Stockwell that convinced him the show could work. Scott Stewart Bakula was born on October 9, 1954, in St. Louis, Missouri, to lawyer Joseph Stewart Bakula and his wife Sally. Raised in a musical household, he started a rock band in the 4th grade and later sang with the St. Louis Symphony. He left the University of Kansas, where he was studying law, in 1976 to join a national touring production of Godspell, a decision that led him permanently into acting. His Broadway debut came in 1983, playing baseball legend Joe DiMaggio in Marilyn: An American Fable. He married Krista Newman in 1981, and the couple had 2 children before divorcing in 1995. Before Quantum Leap, his television resume included the short-lived comedy Gung Ho, a recurring arc on designing women, and the quickly canceled sitcom Eisenhower and Lutz. Bakula famously ad-libbed the line, "Oh boy," during the pilot's final moments, and it became Sam's signature catchphrase for the rest of the series' run, spoken every single time he leaped into a new body and situation. His performance earned him a Golden Globe Award in 1992 and 4 Primetime Emmy nominations across the show's 5 seasons. After Quantum Leap ended, Bakula built one of the more durable careers of his generation, appearing in the Best Picture winner American Beauty in 1999 before taking the lead role of Captain Jonathan Archer on Star Trek Enterprise from 2001 to 2005. He married actress Chelsea Field in 2009, and the couple have 2 children together. Between 2014 and 2021, Bakula anchored 7 seasons of NCIS New Orleans as Special Agent Dwayne Pride. Producers and both Bakula and Stockwell themselves spent years quietly hoping for a proper reunion, a film, a television movie, anything that would bring Sam and Al back together. But the closest it ever came was a brief guest appearance by Stockwell on Star Trek Enterprise during Bakula's run there. Today, Scott Bakula is 71 years old, living in Los Angeles while also keeping a farm in upstate New York, the last surviving lead of a show that, 37 years later, still refuses to be forgotten. There it is, an entire hidden world behind the control room of Quantum Leap. Tragedies that arrived far too early. Careers that quietly built toward a fame nobody could have predicted while the cameras were rolling. Child extras who grew into some of the biggest names in the industry. Guest stars who briefly played history's most infamous killer before becoming beloved television fixtures. And a voice you heard every week without ever knowing whose face belonged to it. And 2 friends whose on-screen chemistry turned out to be just as real as it looked, right up until the very end. Tell us in the comments. Which of these actors' stories surprised you the most? And who was your favorite member of the Quantum Leap cast? If you want to keep discovering the real stories behind the classic shows you grew up with, subscribe to this channel and ring the bell. Every week, we go past the legend and into the life.